All right, good evening, and welcome to the Wednesday, May 17th Rockport School Committee meeting. I am Dr. Mark Branco, the superintendent, and this is one of those rare moments where I get to open the meeting. So the meeting is now open. And our first point of business will be a quick reorg. I just need to remind everybody the meeting is being recorded, audio and video taped. So we'll do a quick reorg first. Welcome to our new member, Miss Amy Oakes, for joining the committee. Thank you very much for stepping up. Your service is appreciated already. And so I'll quickly take a motion to elect a chairperson.
I'll make the motion.
Go ahead.
I nominate Michael Kelly as chairperson.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations, sir.
Welcome back.
Welcome to the seat. And
Thank you.
I hand the gavel back.
Right. So the next item, echo's gone, good. Next item up on our agenda is the election of a vice chairperson. So do I have a motion to nominate a vice chairperson for the school committee?
I move to nominate Kathy Riley, vice chair.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. All right, well, welcome Kathy.
Thank you. Deja vu?
And we should also congratulate Nicola Altieri for winning her election
Yes.
as well.
Thank you, Nicole, for your service.
Thank you for your ongoing service. So we're going to move to a review of open meeting law, Dr. Branco?
So we're certainly not going to go through the entire packet. I just wanted to remind everybody that this is in the drive for your review. Nothing has changed since the 2018 version that was put out by then Attorney General Maura Healey. So it's just our job to do our due diligence, make sure that we are privy to the information, and we make sure we're kind of leaning on it at all times as a committee.
Great.
Sorry.
Review of telephone and email correspondence. So do we have any?
So we do. So similarly, there's a school committee policy, I think, that was in your drive, speaking specifically to electronic mail, just to remind the community and us that they use the single point email to the school committee, and then that will get disseminated appropriately. And also that on the website, on the school committee page, as you can see on the slide deck here, there's just a reminder that all phone numbers, so we'll make sure we got everybody's current phone numbers and information will be listed on the website for community members to be able to either reach out by telephone or by postal mail. And that I think we've strengthened our policy. This is a really sound policy around email, just to make sure that we're not accidentally breaking open meeting laws or getting enticed to do so.
Right. And I think, Mark, it might be worth adding that the way this process works, when you send an email into that address, at times there are issues that someone's trying to bring to the attention of the school committee. At other times, they have a simple procedural question related to how do I sign up for, how do I get. So some of those responses don't actually get to us. They're filtered out by the person who monitors the mailbox. When it's something that is legitimately within our purview, which involves oversight, it then percolates up to us. We discuss it in public. Everyone gets an automated response acknowledging that they have the email, and also gets an explanation as to why they're not getting a detailed response back in writing, because obviously we have to discuss it as a group in open session. So then the role of the school committee.
Can I ask a question
Yeah.
about the policy, I think, was in the drive? Is that the policy? That, it seemed like there was a policy in the drive on the right-hand side?
That's the screenshot on the right-hand side,
Okay.
right?
It mentions a recording secretary in it?
Yes,
Okay. Who
that's
is-
Amanda.
Okay, thank you. I wondered. Thank
Yep.
I also have a question.
Yes.
It says that the member should respond with a brief message and that the member will follow up with a phone call. And is the phone call simply to explain the policy?
Usually, yeah. If you contacted directly by mail or by phone, yes, and hopefully you will filter that to the right individual, kind of a chain of command response. Worst case, you can go right to the chair, and Amanda's always there to kind of be the mediator as well.
Role of the school committee.
So I'll let you take this one.
Okay.
You probably
Sure.
memorized it.
Yeah, no, we haven't. It's interesting. This is a nice way of doing this reorg. We don't often stop here. So the role of the Rockport School Committee is comprised of 5 members who share an interest in promoting and bettering the public education system in the town of Rockport. As defined by Mass General Law, Chapter 71, Section 39, our primary responsibilities include setting and maintaining policy for the Rockport School District, overseeing and approving the annual budget for the school district and acting as the employer for collective bargaining, hiring the superintendent to run the school district, and annually evaluating the superintendent's performance. And I think I would add, because I always like to add this, because it can be a source of confusion when we have a contentious issue, that the role of the school committee is really to represent the one constituency in Massachusetts that can't legally represent themselves, and that's the students in our system, the ones that we're taking care of. So that being the case, although we take input from all sources, whether that's the general public, parents, the staff, boards in town, ultimately our focus is on what best serves the need for the students in our system. So in many cases, well, not in many cases, but we'll occasionally get a response from someone saying, I've given you my opinion and you're not listening. And in fact, we are listening, but at times we may not be agreeing, because our focus is not to balance by Massachusetts charter the needs of, say, the needs repair a seawall versus how do we fund the schools. We don't have to get into that. What we have to get into is how do we best service the needs of the kids in our system. Amy, it looked like you were wanting to say something there. All righty. So I think that's
I think they're good. That kind of
okay.
finishes off the reorg section.
All right, so what we usually do at this time is talk about school committee subcommittees. We can always have an ad hoc committee as needed during the course of the year, but there's some standing committees and assignments that we need to support throughout the year. First one is budget. So as a part of all of our processes, subcommittees cannot have a quorum, so they can't have more than 2 school committee members on them unless we're meeting in public in a publicly advertised meeting. So for budget, typically we've maintained a chair and co-chair are a part of helping to create the budget that is then presented to the school committee in public for review, discussion, and approval. And I think as long as no one has an issue with that, we'll probably maintain that. And Amanda, I can send you a copy of this as well. So for the budget committee, that's Kelly and Riley. Oh, very Irish gang there. All righty. Policy. So this year, uniquely, we have underway a process with the Mass Association of School Committees to do a comprehensive review of all of our policies, because they really grow like Topsy in a sense. They're issued by all sorts of entities, and then the Mass Association of School Committee tries to come up with recommendations that balance the needs of particular districts with the legal framework that they're required to adhere to within Massachusetts. Occasionally, we have multiple policies trying to cover the same ground. We've tried in the past to have members on an ongoing basis review handfuls of the policies, sometimes large handfuls. Rick Drost in the past did, I would say, about 100 of those a year and really did a nice job on that. But in terms of synchronizing them across the entire entity and in terms of connecting that with our public documentation and with some of our contractual issues, they offer a service that could take a couple of years to completely go through the policies, but they'll leave us with a very fresh, up-to-date, totally synchronized with existing Massachusetts statute. But that being the case, there still needs to be some oversight about what that's looking like as they move forward. So the thought here, Mark, I know you had expressed an interest in this in the past, and Amy, this is often where we've had new members come on board and become familiar with how we're conducting ourselves, how the state would require us to conduct ourselves, and how we share that with the public. So I think it's a really nice time, because a lot of the heavy lifting will be done by this mass group, and then our oversight to make sure that it's scaled appropriately for a district of our size. We're not addressing issues that we don't actually have. I think that seems like a nice assignment if you two are feeling good about that.
Mr. Chair, I'm hoping to be in connection with the reviewer by the end of this week.
Nice.
And so, my hope is to come to the last meeting in June with a timeline update, so to speak. And then just to remind everybody, because Amy, you weren't here, what's gonna happen then is they will come to us, by section, hopefully not by the entire book, hopefully by section, one chunk at a time, with all of the updates, and I'm sure they're gonna find redundancies. I've already shared with the chair some moments during the business of doing the school this year where we found redundancies in a policy in one place and another where there's a little discrepancy. So all of those are kind of be vetted out, and then what happens is they'll bring that chunk of policies to the two of you and to me as a team. We'll take a look at them and kind of Rockport them up, so to speak, and like make sure they make sense. And then they'll come here in a chunk, and then the full committee will have a chance to look at them for a first and a second read. So while it didn't feel like much of a heavy lift this year to be on that team, I do anticipate probably between, maybe July, August, and the middle of next year, that there's gonna be some serious work to us putting that together. And I'd love to make it a more aggressive timeline with them and say, like,
Yeah,
by January, we have that thing put to bed, or earlier would
I
be
was
my
gonna
hope.
just add on to that and mention what you just said about July, August. I'd
Yeah.
love to get started this summer, at least with a section or two if
Yes.
possible.
Yeah.
The other nice thing too about the service is the accessibility of it, and I believe that's part of it too.
It
So I
is.
don't know if those are some conversations we can have or you've already had with them.
Right,
Amy?
so it stays on a database that they populate, and all the school districts in Massachusetts that use this service, that way it gets stored there in their servers, and then we have like a direct link out to their servers. So if something gets updated at the state level, they automatically make the update, they send us a quick information, I share it with the subcommittee, they share it with the school committee, and then it goes live, which is kind of nice too. So yeah, it's almost like one-stop shopping for those of us who are involved with the organization.
Great. Sounds good. Wellness Committee, now, I know in the past, Nicole, that's been something of interest to you. Is that still of interest, or?
Well, this year, it was not a very active year with that committee. I think just with all different shifts going on in people's roles and things, but I will continue with that.
Okay, and I don't know if anyone wants to join that, or if there,
So that's a role that's gonna get filled. It did not get filled in my first year, so we did not have the curriculum coordinator for health and wellness filled, for a variety of reasons. I anticipate filling that and letting that person know, before the end of this school year that they'll be appointed to that position for next year. So that'll kind of give us a school
I'll start.
point person. And I think, Massachusetts is still working on the 1999 frameworks for health and wellness. It's
Wow.
embarrassing to say publicly, how long it's taken them to take a look at those frameworks. So some of the frustration in public schools in Massachusetts is we're hesitant to pull the trigger on major change because there's a lot of politicizing of that particular set of frameworks right now. And until we have that new set of frameworks in our hands, we don't really have the backing to go in certain directions in certain curricular areas. So I think that'll be an interesting committee that once we get a point person from the faculty involved, and once those frameworks at least are in a draft form, rumor has it that'll be September, October, then we'll be able to pull that team together in a thoughtful way.
That'd be good. And the health and wellness policy, I'm not sure, I think that I was involved the last time it was updated, but I know that was another sort of thing that committee worked
Yes.
on.
Yep.
Which was really, it was really interesting, so.
Great. Communications, so that's morphed in our last year. When Mark came on board, we wanted to really streamline and solidify our communications. I think we had a lot of different actors trying to send out information helpfully, but the net result was there's just a lot of stuff that people got in their mailboxes. So I think we pushed that back upon his request to Superintendent Branco. But then in terms of the communications committee per se, Mark, maybe you can give us an update on where you think that is, and then we can figure out if it's appropriate to have.
So I would welcome either direction. I guess I'll give you my thoughts on where we are and where I think we're gonna go. So you've seen a lot of these changes in real time this year with us streamlining Friday communications from the schools, with us using 3 or 4 major social media platforms. We're gonna try to add into that principal or superintendent coffees or forums publicly in year 2, which we've talked about, I think, in this meeting a couple times already. The only piece that I haven't put physically on paper is that communications map. And that's kind of the last piece of this puzzle. That would, again, be a digital and a hard copy, kind of a streamlining the who I need to go to, so to speak, the hierarchy of communication. So that will get done over the summer. And then we'll finally have an articulated plan on the page, so to speak, that then reflects all of the practices we've made changes to. So I'm not sure there'll be a lot of work for a committee. If you, I would prefer, if it works for you all, for me just maybe every quarter or so, come with an update on what it looks like, how it's working, find a way to get feedback from the public. If you recall, Mike Montgomery put in the slide deck that I used at our meeting when I put out the new social media plan, that he has the ability to aggregate all that data and pull it all together
Right.
and figure out which platforms are being used the most. So
Right.
that would be an interesting report in year two, be to come back to the committee and say, hey, we're killing it on LinkedIn for jobs, or we're killing it on the Facebook page, but nobody's using Twitter anymore, or whatever the end
Right.
result is. So if you're okay with that, I'm not sure there'd be a lot of lift for an actual committee. but-
Well, and I think in some years, for us, communications has meant separate and distinct from the internal entities to push out, for example, news and reasons to support and overrides.
Fair.
That's something that the
Yeah,
school
totally fair.
can't do. So I guess I'm looking to my other
Yeah.
committee members
Yeah.
about, I wonder if one option is, as you put that final piece in place, we regroup and decide what role
That's a good idea.
or what aspect of communications the school committee
That's a
would
good
be
idea.
involved in.
That's a great idea,
Nicole, you
actually.
look like you're best.
So I think that it's important for us as a committee and as elected representatives to think about how we, just separate from sort of, what's going on the day-to-day basis, but how we as elected representatives are receiving information from our constituents and how we're giving information to our constituents. So maybe you're right, maybe we need to regroup and just sort of think about that and how we're doing that and how, we're having that two-way communication and making sure we're having that two-way communication with.
So I wonder if on the final plan, if there's a school committee section on the whole district's communication plan that makes it really clear.
Because I totally agree that
Yeah.
all of the things that the admin team and all the people that are putting things out on Instagram, it's great to have just the streamlined communication, and we do not want to interrupt that in any way. But I do think it's important for us to, as a committee, to just sort of think about how we're communicating with constituents and how we're receiving information.
I wonder, do you think we need a subcommittee for that, or do you think that could be something we discuss, at the end of the agenda when we have school committee discussion, that could be an item every other month or something to talk about that? Because I think your idea, the two-way communication, I think is really important. And I like your idea about having on that plan a school committee section, so kind of merging the two together.
And could we,
But-
is it possible to do ad hoc committees where, let's say, there's something that we want to do, or thinking like, oh, the school committee wants to have coffees, or we want to, whatever it is that we want to do, and then we say, okay, Mark and Kathy, you're gonna put that together. So we don't need a standing committee, but maybe we have an as-needed.
I like the idea of having it on the agenda at some time frame we choose, just to make sure it doesn't fall by the wayside and it's constantly in our front.
Well, and I think too, there's probably some need here for, if you think of the communications plan that Mark is gonna share with us shortly, or the sort of fully filled out plan, it's like the daily newspaper or the train tables, but then in terms of how do we want to market ourselves as a school system, what direction do we want to go in, certainly aspects of that are wholly within our public meeting. Whether or not we need a smaller subcommittee to talk through what is it we're going to offer up to the rest of the committee as potential directions, options, alternatives. So
Yeah, and
I think maybe it's premature for that until we see your plan to see what's in and what's out.
So I'm actually,
Yeah.
think I'm changing my tune on camera as I listen to you, so, with them being flexible here. I'm just thinking now, the benefit of the committee is that you can have conversations without breaking open meeting law.
Right.
So if there is some work that needs to be done pre or post, and you have a couple point people for that, even if it's just simply to come to my office and discuss it, then you're kind of covered.
Yeah.
So
'cause
maybe it is worth a conversation to.
I do
formalize it.
think that often in the last couple of years, particularly with COVID and then into the override, it's really been reactive rather than proactive. But now I think with the new superintendent, with the override having passed, we have some time to decide how we shape our external message, because we have so many great successes in the community that beyond parents attending, they don't often see. We have one coming up soon, the senior showcase. And I remember last year, what was amazing about that was here's this incredible venue. Here are these incredibly talented kids giving back to the community. The community was going, but the actual discussion points on the local media and Rockport stuff was, where are the food trucks? Which was really, to me, felt like no good deed goes unpunished. It's like, food trucks, why are you coming to us about food trucks? We have people playing the violin and using a hula hoop while they're playing it. We have astonishing, musical performances and acting. And so I don't think we necessarily do a great job communicating or engaging the town outside of the people with vested interests, the parents who are going to see that and the teachers. So that might be something
Yeah, that's a good point.
that, would be helped by that sort of group being able to look at sort of a larger picture than just the heavy lift of, on a daily basis, how do we consistently message out?
Yeah, even miscommunication, it can at least be troubleshot outside
Yeah.
of a formal situation.
Right.
Yeah.
So that being the case, in terms of communications, does anyone think they'd like to be a part of that, or is this something we want to regroup later, but are aware that Mark's plan is not going to cover all contingencies? It's,
I think we should decide, I kind of like the idea of making a subcommittee now, and just like you said, in order to at least meet
Be ready for it.
and come up with, some brainstorming and discussions.
Yep.
So I think we should do it now since we're
Okay.
on topic.
Committee, yeah, I agree.
is there anyone who,
I'm happy to be a part of it. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to help out with that.
I'll
Yeah, you wanna do it?
will do it?
Right.
Okay. And again, Amy, you probably know this, but the way this typically works is while the subcommittee may be off without the rest of us to avoid a quorum, at certain points in the discussion, they come back to us, present options, we all get to weigh in and decide what to do. So nothing is really decided off stage, but raw research is done to try and lime in the issues. Okay, so then we come to the three school councils, elementary, middle, and high school. The tricky part about those is sometimes they meet sporadically, unpredictably, and it's hard to get there in the middle of the day if that's when they're occurring. Now, I know Mark was gracious enough to volunteer for middle school council, but we don't have coverage right now for elementary or high school. So I don't know.
I can do either that are helpful, and
Okay,
the middle of the day is not a problem for me.
all right. How about elementary? Because we have we often not lose track of them, but for most of us, our kids have aged out of that sphere, so we don't have a natural connection in there. Okay, that's great. So then high school council is the outstanding one.
This is when I really miss Zoom, because it was so
Yeah.
easy just to zoom in, take a break from work, zoom in and zoom out. And I just, with work these days, I can't get away in the middle of the afternoon.
Right, and
I have I wonder if Amy, I don't know what day, do we know if they have a standing day?
They will, so that, it'd be,
Yeah.
yeah, they will. One, I'm not opposed necessarily to having the Zoom conversation either with all three principals. I mean, that's not written in stone anywhere, really.
Yeah.
We did very minimalist approach this year for a purpose, right, during my entry. But as you know, it's gonna be kind of fast forward pretty quickly now as we develop a strategy for district improvement. And the end of that strategy will have all of the articulated, big rocks and strategies that are gonna happen at the school level. That part of the document takes place of the school improvement plans. So what's gonna happen is, I would foresee either probably quarterly meetings, probably every other month, so I could see it maybe being four meetings a year as opposed to every month,
I'm
so.
happy to also do the high school, if you guys are okay with me doing two school councils. I don't know how
Or you could split the high school too, however you guys wanna do
Or
it. it's
maybe if
easier.
they do Zoom, Kathy, if you miss it, maybe saying if the Zoom's an option, you want to do
Yeah,
it.
Yeah.
I could do Zoom or
Okay.
I have a
telephone call.
work conflict too usually in the
And if for some reason
day.
the Zoom isn't gonna work for some reason, let me know and I'll,
Does it work for you in the middle of the day?
yeah, usually it's after school, so it's
Yeah,
fine,
yeah, yeah, it'll
Yeah.
be after dismissal time.
okay, nice, thank you.
Usually has a, parent.
Mm-hmm.
So then we have standing liaisons with three of the boards that we interact with the most heavily. Board of Selectmen, Board of Health, Finance Committee. I've opted to take Finance Committee as part of the budgeting process, so that makes sense. I know, Nicole, with your public health degree and with your connections with the Board of Health historically, does that still feel comfortable?
I will stick with the Board of Health.
That's great. And then Board of Selectmen, so Kathy, it might be important as vice chair. Typically, vice chair moves into the chair role in the next year. That
Right.
might be a good connection to
that's
have
great.
if you're comfortable with that. They're always open for at least one other member to join if they wish, but we just have to be careful about a quorum. So
Just
if,
one other, yeah.
yeah, if three of us were attending a Board of Selectmen meeting, technically, they would have to declare a joint meeting, so. But it's not, typically, all of these boards give us a heads up if there's a topic that directly impacts us or requires our presence. So it's more of them just having a name to be able to connect to reach out for that attendance to join.
Do you want me to do the high school council if you're doing the select board?
Sure, I should be realistic.
Well, between the budget and the select board, those could be,
Yeah.
And I'm being
More time.
quiet over here, right? Because I'm not sure what's
And sometimes
appropriate.
we do a shuffle,
Yeah.
you know,
That's-
if it's not working,
Mhm.
so, thank you.
Mhm.
We might shuffle. Nicole also is always juggling.
And then the last standing one we have, which is not every year, are the RTA negotiations. So we have a negotiation year coming up. I've put myself on that because I've done it before and as chair. And then there's an opening for someone else to be a participant in this. I think there are a lot of, Nicole, you've expressed an interest, Kathy, you're co-chair, but Amy, you've been in this arena before as well, so
Yeah.
there's an opportunity here. So I don't,
I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to stand back. What do you think?
I've done it before, so if you would like to do it.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it.
I think that would
Yeah, that's great.
be great because it also gives some nice perspective from out of state for Mark, not, you know, the rest of us. Okay, so those are the standing connections we have with the outside world. Are there any that I've forgotten about, or are there an ad hoc committee that we can think of right away? Probably not. We can always add them as we see fit or see a need. Okay,
All
so
right.
Amanda, I'll send you a little screenshot of that. I was typing as we talked. Next item, approval of minutes from May 3rd. So everyone but Amy can vote on this.
Well, I was absent.
Everyone but Amy and Kathy can vote on this. Are there any amendments, changes that anyone wishes to make? So I'll read them. Do I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from May 3rd?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second?
All those in favor? Aye. All right. Public comment. So the whole room turns and looks at the one member in our audience.
Yes, come on right up to the table here.
Push that button so it turns green and we'll be able to hear
Have
you.
a seat, push the button, and just give us your name and address.
I'm Gary Weems at 109 Granite Street. I used to run the Emerson Inn, in case any of you remember that. I've always been interested, frankly, in the teaching of history. And I came to see what you fellows were doing, whether you were involved in any of this sort of thing. I used to hire bellmen from Rockport High, and one of the questions I'd ask, just for the fun of it, was the dates of the Civil War. Basic question. Who doesn't know that? None of them did. Not one of those bellboys I hired knew the defining piece of our history. Our history is divided into what happened before, what happened after. And they didn't know. I didn't ask them who Stonewall Jackson was. I didn't ask them to tell me who Sheridan was or say Jeb Stuart or any of them. They didn't have to know the dates of the Gettysburg or any of this sort of stuff, but they should have known the basics. And that's what's always been a concern to me is the standards that we have, because nothing, frankly, in my opinion, is more important to being a citizen than knowing what our country's been through, knowing the sacrifices that people have made for our country, knowing what it is, what it means. And if you don't know that, you don't see the importance of what makes our country so special. This was an amazing event, our revolution. It was an amazing event in the world. Nobody had ever seen anything like it. And France tore themselves to pieces trying to copy what we did. So it's so important for us all to understand how special this country is. And to me, it's important to know these things. I'd love to have people understand economics too, but I know that's hopeless. But anyway, that's why I'm here. I'm here to see what you guys do and listen, and because I just have no idea what authorities you have, or whether you have any effect on curriculum or any of this sort of thing. But that's why I'm here, and to listen, to see what you do, and maybe make that comment.
Okay. And Gary, can I just clarify, is it specifically about the Civil War or just about the
No,
general
just
understanding?
Just our history. Just
Yeah.
people
Okay.
should know what we've been through,
Sure.
what we are as a people, how amazing this experiment was in the world, what a bright light this was to the world. And people don't seem to understand that. They think, oh, we're just like any other run-of-the-mill country, but we aren't.
Sure.
We were the guiding light. We were something that brought something to the world. I don't think we'd have a democracy in the world if it weren't for us. Anyway, that's one of the things that I'm sort of interested in. And standards, I think, are very important. I think that I'd love to see Rockport come out, as being a super school where people say, gee, let's go to Rockport. Let's educate our kids. It used to be a little bit like that. Kids from Gloucester would come over here because Rockport was that good. Maybe we are now, but that's why I'm here to find out.
If you if you talk to the Gloucester superintendent of schools, you'd find out that, yes, quite a number of very gifted kids from Gloucester come
that's
over
good.
here.
No, that's
So
good. That's hopefully good.
There does have that, but I think part of what you're saying really illustrates what we were talking about before, where to some degree, you don't know this because we're not transmitting it out in a way that someone who doesn't have a kid in the system becomes aware of it. So that's I think, on us to reassure people like you, who presumably you're on Granite Street,
Yeah.
you're taxpayers, and you need to know.
Well, it's an open
what's going on.
meeting, so I thought it would be
Yep.
interesting to find these things out. And frankly, you know what, a lot of us are nervous about this 16-19 kind of stuff, that they're turning kids against each other. I know we wouldn't do that here. I just don't even think that would even be considered. But it's in the back of our heads, it's concern of this sort of stuff.
Sure.
So we like to say, well, let's find out.
Yeah.
During the big Hamilton, Hamilton, the
Sure.
Broadway thing,
Mhm.
my daughter was obsessed with Hamilton and the music.
It's a
and everything,
great
right?
book. If you've read that book,
Yeah.
that's a
yeah.
great book. It's a great book.
We read it after,
Mhm.
but she went into, I don't know what year of history it was, and she goes, Mom, do you know that this is history? Like, this really happened.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, honey.
Yeah.
So she's like, I did very well on my test because I remembered that song, and
Well, I'm glad that we've pressed Hamilton because he was such an important person. And in the past, he was kind of in the background. Everything was Jefferson and Madison and Washington, et cetera, which is all well and good. But we are more Hamiltonian in our makeup today than we are any of the other founding fathers. Hamilton really foresaw what we would become.
Sure.
yeah.
Well, and it's only anecdotal, but you're leading me to this. Just as you had sort of information from the kids who worked for you who didn't seem particularly aware, from my anecdotal awareness, separate from the school committee, my two sons who have gone through AP history, it becomes sort of a never-ending battle of history trivia at our
Yes,
dinner
exactly.
table.
Yeah.
So I don't know how representative either sample is
I love historical
particularly.
trivia, frankly.
But I mean, if you want to come compete about who's the vice president all the way back, we certainly have that thread going.
Oh, yeah, vice
For
president.
some reason, Martin Van Buren becomes a focus of real trivia savagery.
I've got one for you if you like trivia.
Okay.
Tell me, who do you think was the most critical person, the most important person of the history of the 20th century? Who affected the history of the 20th century the most? What one person do you think? And I'll tell you who I think it is.
Of the 20th century, so maybe that's the key. Well, okay, who do you think it is?
A fellow named Gavrilis Princep.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
You know who I mean?
No.
He's the guy who shot Archduke Ferdinand at Sarajevo. Started World War I. It set the whole history in motion. The whole history of the 20th century goes right back to that event. We wouldn't have had the Russian Revolution. We wouldn't have had Hitler. We wouldn't have Stalin. We would have had nothing without that event. So
Interesting.
that's my.
What I was just going to add, and maybe an interesting question to ask the staff when you were hiring them would maybe be not so much about those facts, but thinking about the connections between what during that Civil War timeframe, what parallels can you make to the present? Because I think a lot of
All
times
sorts of-
in the curriculum now, it's not so much fact-based, it's more that critical thinking skills. And so that would be a really interesting question to
Well,
think
one
about
thing,
asking.
I mean, we all think that, oh, things are so awful right now, you know, we all think that. At almost on any time. You could have thought that in the 60s, you could think that now, and things are awful right now, quite frankly, worse than awful. But can you imagine, in the 1850s, you might be working next to Sam Brown over there, and all of a sudden a slaver comes up here, a bounty hunter, takes your neighbor, and drags him back south. Can you imagine having to put up with that today? But that's what people were putting up with in the 1850s before the just all boiled over.
So, okay, so now as.
I'm sorry, I'm taking over your
As
meeting.
chair, now I have to go back to the very mechanical. So typically for public commentary, we're looking to illuminate items that we'll be debating on the agenda that night. So
I see.
no,
Okay.
I'm not, don't worry, I'm not chasing out of here, but
Oh,
typically it's constrained to items on the agenda. So partially what I'm taking away from your comment tonight is you're interested in curriculum, you're interested in the impact on curriculum. We do have meetings throughout the year where we review by curriculum
I see.
area what we're doing. Now, that's posted on both the school website, which you may not be particularly familiar with. The meetings themselves are posted on the town website, but we could definitely, if you're interested, send you a flare as to when we're doing curriculum
Okay.
nights. But those are pretty expansive. So if your interest is social studies history, there's a whole section on that. If it's English, if it's math, if it's sciences, and that might be a way to get at the information you're looking for.
sure.
You know, we're very careful and we're prescribed by the state not to meddle in the curriculum because frankly,
sure.
we have curriculum experts, educational professionals who vet everything that comes into the system against state and federal requirements. So if the concern is that somehow something's coming in that's very alarming, it's been vetted so heavily. I mean, some people would be concerned at the slowness with which materials actually enter this system because they're so heavily reviewed. But that's something that would come up in the curriculum
Well, doesn't
nights per
doesn't
se.
the local school committee determine curriculum? I always thought it was sort of the whole teaching thing was supposed to be based on the local level.
So the local school committee provides oversight through the employee, one of the employees they hire, which is the superintendent of schools, and he's applying that pressure across the experts, subject matter experts within the school, which include curriculum directors, and then teachers who are specifically focused on their area of study. So in some ways, it would be, well, it is wholly inappropriate for us to dictate curriculum.
Well, yeah, I suppose
Wholesale, yeah.
that would be difficult. Yeah.
But if you think about sort of appellate court systems up to the Supreme Court, what we're here to do is to make sure that the general direction that Superintendent Branco is describing is one that we feel is in consonance with what the state of Massachusetts is requiring for a successful graduate leaving high school. And then beyond that, we're allowed to question him about certain decisions that come in to make sure that someone is keeping, there's an oversight function that's being appropriately
Yeah.
supported. But I would suggest maybe the curriculum nights are the ones that would really give you the meat of what it is you're looking for in terms of what's going on.
It's curious. I mean, that's why I'm here, because I know it was an
Yeah,
open
no, it's
meeting. I
nice
was
to have you
curious
here.
to see what's going on and how it worked, and you're answering a lot of questions for me, which is good.
Well, and frankly, it's nice to get the feedback about, social studies historically can be a topic, whether you're on the publishing side of the aisle or whether you're in education. It tends to get less emphasis than some of the hard sciences.
Well, I understand. The hard sciences are where you make a living primarily. Sure, makes sense.
Right. But the soft
These things
sciences
are
are
what
what
makes you a
make you
citizen.
interesting after you finish the day.
But when you know your social studies and even you know your economics, that makes you a better citizen,
Right,
in my opinion.
yes. So, well, that's great. Thank you for your input.
Okay, well, thank you for
It's great to have you
tolerating
here.
me.
Please come back and
I
we'll.
guess I'm your whole peanut gallery here.
Yes,
Certainly, we are.
Well, maybe I should let you guys go ahead
Thank you.
and do as you were doing.
Well,
And
it's
thank you
You're
again
welcome to
for
stay.
putting up with me. I probably will attend other meetings if that's okay.
Yes.
Love to
yeah,
have you.
no, absolutely. It's,
Just sit there and be quiet
here.
and listen.
we like having you here.
Sure,
Thank you.
nice to meet you.
That brings us to correspondence. I'm quickly checking.
None at this time.
None at this time. All right. Personnel. We do have some personnel items.
We do. So I'd like to announce and welcome Mr. Thomas Smoker to the district. He's been appointed to the position of middle school and high school choral director for the upcoming school year. Some of you might be familiar with Mr. Smoker. He has worked in the district as a piano accompanist on and off
Oh, that's good. I was trying to figure out.
for some of the musicals and some of the choral events. Very, very talented musician and educator. Currently on faculty at the Berklee College of Music. Has multiple degrees, including a master's degree in opera performance. I believe from Boston Conservatory, and comes to us with a lot of chops. So as we say in the music industry, so he's going to be very excited to hit the ground running, and to help us build that team up. And anytime you have someone new come in, it's fresh eyes on programming and fresh eyes on our students, and it's going to really allow us to just take a broad look at what our vocal music program looks like. And I'm excited to see what Mr. Smoker does. Also, really excited to tell you that we have hired a BCBA. I know that was a concern when we decided to make the shift from the two council model at the middle school to the BCBA, because sometimes it's hard to find BCBAs in the public school sector. Mr. Adam Reardon is joining us. He has quite a bit of experience as a BCBA, particularly at Landmark and other private and semi-public private school settings. And we are really excited about tapping his knowledge to help us build up a behavioral program that will start at the elementary school and kind of grow up to the middle school. I've met both gentlemen at the end when we were doing the interview process, and both are very excited to be here. And again, Mr. Reardon is going to bring a lot of experience, knowledge, and we basically told him that he has a blank slate. He's going to work closely with our school psychologists, with our assistant principals, and with our special ed team to make sure that we can build something that's foundationally sound right out of the gate for our students who are struggling in this particular area. So, two important hires. We have more to come. I'll probably have a good list for you at the very last meeting of the year.
Questions or? Good. Share the success. Josh isn't here.
No, I'll just fill in quickly off the top of my head. I mean, you're living here, and some of you have kids here. It's busy. It's downhill. We've got concerts and celebrations of success. Senior week is coming up. Our fields are packed with kids playing in final games, some of them final games of their high school career, and some of them looking to postseason. Music department I'm in awe of everything I see since the minute I got here. Still trying to cram in a couple more concerts at the end on us. So there's a lot going on. I'm excited to see kind of the fruits of our labor as I walk around, and I still see teaching and learning. There's a little MCAS hangover, so to speak, in some of the hallways right now.
Yep.
Which is to be expected. But I think as we get over that, we've still got a good few weeks of school left, and I anticipate seeing some nice culminating activities and some displays of learning. And this is a great time. It's a really fun time of year in the schools.
It is. So we have senior prom coming up on Friday, which means we have promenade
Yep.
before it in the gymnasium, which is always incredibly special for the parents and incredibly mortifying or delightful to the kids, depending on what sort of personality you have. Next week, we have senior showcase at the Shaylin Lou,
Oh my God.
and then
Senior
graduation,
There's, I think, an event
Missing?
in between there somewhere.
The banquet,
The banquet.
the senior banquet.
yeah.
That's
and there's a
right.
sports banquet if you have sports kids.
Good grief.
So all I can tell you, if you're in the public or even if you're sitting in this room, is pull your phone out, go to the website, click the calendar, check all. That's the only way I survive and know where to go, unless I literally text Amanda at her house and say, where do I have to go next? So short of doing that, go to the calendar, check all. That'll be athletics, elementary, middle school, high school, district. That will literally give you a scroll on your phone. And that's what I do in my office. I don't even check my calendar on a good day. I just scroll and see what's coming up next.
Nice.
Smart.
Okay. I don't believe we have any subcommittee updates unless someone wants to correct me. Okay. Unfinished business, we don't have any on our standard agenda. Donation of books, there have been 2 books a day in Rockport and the 11th Hour donated by Sue Hardy.
Harvey.
I've got Hardy up
I
here.
think it's Harvey, but I could be wrong.
I've got Harvey down here.
We've spelled it 2 different ways.
Harvey.
No, I'm asking. Thank you.
Okay,
So-
so the drive was,
Drive is correct, and my
Drive is
typo is
correct.
wrong. So thank you very much for donating the 2 books to RPS. We are constantly looking to upgrade the library. As you all know, we have limited funds, so whether it's 1 book or 100 books, we're extremely thankful. And these are 2 particular titles that are going to be used across the district, so thank you very much.
so we do need a motion to accept
Yes.
the donation of these 2 books from Sue Hardy.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor? Aye. All right, so now this brings us to an interesting topic that really argues for full detail before making assumptions. This is the RPS Food Services response to the town's single-use plastics prohibition.
So you all have way more history than I do on this particular topic, but the quick overview that I have is this is, something that came to fruition a couple years back, and then implementation stalled. Board of Selectmen then put a halt on mandated following through on this prohibition, and then recently at the town meeting, it was readdressed. So the short version is that we have to make sure we are compliant and moving forward with the community, hopefully by June 1st. And so I spent a good amount of time working with Deb Noakes, who I have to thank for putting everything together. She's really doing all the work behind the scenes, and I'm just sort of the one reporting everything tonight. So Nicole and I met, Friday, I think, last Friday, just to kind of get our ducks in a row, to give Nicole an update on where the district was going to be going, since she's the liaison to the Board of Health. And then Monday morning, I met with Barbara McCarthy and Dr. Ron Newman from the Board of Health. They were supposed to have a meeting Monday evening that we were going to attend, and that got rescheduled for either next week or the following week. So Nicole and I will be attending the Board of Health meeting. And so what I want to do tonight is show you the 1-pager that we're going to submit at the Board of Health, and that I'm going to use as a talking point, just so that we're all calibrated on what's going to happen before it actually happens. So if you don't mind, I'm going to step right through the document just so that it makes some sense. I think what's important in a contextual standpoint that some of us know and a lot of the public does not, is that the Food Service Department is a self-sustaining entity, does not receive financial support in any way from the district general fund, so that all operating funds, food, supplies, salaries, equipment acquisition, maintenance costs, all of that has to be raised from federal and state reimbursement for meal sales, and also has to come in from à la carte sales. So there's a lot of misunderstanding around the current food model, because we know that the feds and the state continue to graciously extend the timeline for free lunches, which in some districts, including ours, is also free breakfast. That doesn't mean that we just have a free program. It doesn't mean they're handing us money to operate the program. It simply means the purchase of those, what we call the square lunches, so to speak, are not passed on to the families and the consumer and the students at this time. So while that one single free lunch that includes a milk or a juice and the 4 squares, so to speak, is federally funded, and to some extent coming through the state, that's not true for all of the other a la carte items. And quite honestly, the a la carte sales make up a substantial percentage of the money that comes in, and it's really counted on heavily to reach a balanced budget every year. And so water, as simple as it sounds, is a major, major sales item in our à la carte menus, for a lot of reasons that we're gonna talk about. We really do, second bullet, face a lot of procurement problems like every other industry does at this time with supply chain issues, very, very high material costs, and currently, strangely enough, limited availability of non-plastic vessels. So while the world is going in this direction, and our country is going in this direction, and many coastal communities, for a lot of good reasons, are going in this direction, the industry has not caught up. So there is another supply and demand issue, and the people who are ahead of the game in the supply and demand issue are clearly looking to turn a massive profit at the expense of the rest of us who don't have a lot of options yet. So that's just the sort of reality right there. The vendors allowed by the Massachusetts procurement practices, we are a member of TEC, the Tech Co-op, so similar to special ed collaboratives, we also have a food service collaborative, so to speak. And we get reduced pricing in bulk order in a lot of ways because we are a member of that co-op. They currently do not have a plastic bottle alternative readily available to purchase for the school year 23, and they simply do not have an approved one or are even on the approved bid list yet for school year 24. So because of that, when we go out, which we're going to do, when we go out to find alternatives to the single-use plastic bottles, we're not going to get that discounted procurement rate. We're going to be paying top dollar to whoever wants to sell those to us. And that only gets passed on in one direction, quite honestly. So I just think it's important to know all of that. We had a real interesting conversation, first Nicole and I, and then with Dr. Newman and Barbara about the equity concerns, which you would not necessarily think about right out of the gate unless you saw this play out in schools. So currently, we have a lot of students who purchase that 16.8 or whatever size it is, 16.8 ounce water bottle, Poland Springs or whatever brand we sell. They get it in the morning, or they get it as they walk by the calf, or minimally they get it at lunch during the a la carte time. They drink a bottle, they use the same bottle, they go back to our water refilling stations once, twice, 3 times, depending if they're staying after school for music or sports or anything else, and they put that back in their backpack or they carry it, and many of them are accustomed to that habit. Not every family can afford a $25 Yeti or a $30 Yeti. Not every family can afford a $25 or a $30 Hydro Flask, which is the other fancy one. So the concern we have is that there are a lot of students that this is their go-to. There are a lot of families that hand that child the Poland Springs bottle of water and say, just make sure you fill it up all day long. Because, and speaking of someone who's had, a high school boy who loses a lot of stuff, you don't, you could be taking out a second mortgage to keep replacing, reusable carry bottles. And I'll just tell you now, you go to the athletic director's office today, and I think John Parisi has between 30 and 50 in a box. It's its own lost and found. It's literally just water bottles with names on them or no names on them, and parents' companies on them and everything else. So there really is an equity issue that we want to address. Again, it's not that we're not all in on following and understanding the benefits behind this movement, but I just want to make sure we highlight publicly the equity side of this work. And I think that was eye-opening for some of the people we've had conversations with so far. So that put the twist top back on and carry all day is not possible with an aluminum can, and it's not possible with a cardboard box. It's just not going to work that way. As a matter of fact, they're limited to having to finish that thing. Because they're really not going to carry a half-drank can of water or squishable box of water out of the cafeteria at the end of lunch. They're either going to throw it away, which is a waste in itself, or they're going to swig it and be done with it and then have no reusing water option, refillable option as they go on today. So just something we have to talk about. So that last sentence in that first bullet under impact, we are just barely scraping the surface on this conversation, starting with Monday and then Friday with Nicole. So right now, we have to address the equity concerns. So the district is going to have to seek some kind of low or no-cost option for some students and families, or all students and families who are interested in acquiring reusable bottles. I mean, the one I'm carrying here, I don't know how much it was because it was a gift from my wife, but I don't think this costs as much as a $30 bottle. So maybe we talk about something that's branded Rockport Public Schools, that somebody from the community can partner with us, so that it's not coming right out of the appropriate budget necessarily. It's a conflict of interest in a strange way. I can't ask Deb to sell them in the cafeteria because I think then she's cutting into her own profit margin, because she would like them to buy the cans of water and the boxes of water because her program is self-sustaining. So I really don't want to put her in that position. But we have a DECA program, we have lots of philanthropy in the community. And maybe I'm just suggesting that we find a way to start the school year with everybody getting one, and then you lose it, you know, maybe you can get the next one at a really low cost, a $5 cost or whatever. I'm kind of riffing on the cost right now, but I am concerned about that. It would not have been something that was on any of our radar until we started to really watch what was happening in our schools. The second impact to talk about here is it has already led to considerably lower sales. So Deb had piloted sales of the canned product right next to the water bottle. So maybe it could be a little bit skewed data-wise because it's a competitive thing right there, as opposed to just putting it out as its only option. But right now, the data we have is the data we have. And it's 74% lower sales comparatively, which really could impact the bottom line for food services in a pretty drastic way moving forward. So when you look at our action steps, we have begun offering the 12-ounce aluminum canned spring water. This is 33% less water, but it has to retail at 25% higher. So as such, the cost will increase from $1 for 16.8 ounce to $1.25 for a 12-ounce can. We have to keep the profit margin the same. So when Deb and I talked about this before I kind of edited this for tonight, there's no way I can approve her of dropping the profit margin based on the need to be self-sustaining and the predictability of declining sales. So knowing all of that, we have to keep the profit margin percentage the same. We are exploring 16-ounce cardboard water box options, but again, we can't go through the tech co-op for that option because they're not on the bid list and they're not even available. That will be $2.50 per box. So from $1 to $2.50, and you get 0.8 ounce less. So the short version from a sustainability standpoint, that's the wrong word because we're talking about sustainability, but from a financial sustainability standpoint, is it's going to drastically cut into the sales. And it is what it is, that we're going to adapt to that. And secondly, I have to really make sure we're addressing the equity issue for kids carrying vessels. So as of June 1st, the food service department will no longer offer the single-use plastic water bottles. We're prepared to do that. We're hoping that we can go through the inventory quickly. If for some reason we have inventory left over, we'll find ways to use it creatively, donate it to the athletics department, the musicians, anybody staying after school, the preschool, childcare, the YMCA program. We'll figure out how to appropriately use it. We just won't be selling it anymore at that standpoint. So conversation and questions about this, and then I'll shift quickly to the other initiative related to recycling. That's probably going to come up at the Board of Health meeting, but if you want, let's stay focused on this first.
Right now, where do we stand with the Board of Health in the sense that I guess there's a town regulation?
Yep.
We're not in compliance with it,
Which is okay until June 1st.
which is okay until June 1st.
Yeah.
And that's through this last meeting, or that's just when it goes into
I believe
effect for
that's
the
when it goes in
town?
effect, yeah.
Got extended to June 1st.
Right.
Okay, for the entire town or just the school?
I believe it was the
Town,
entire
the whole town, yeah.
Okay. Hmm.
I have a question.
Is it that we're not allowed to sell the bottles, or that we're not allowed to use them at all?
Yeah, so a parent can send a child in with it,
Sure,
and they can reuse the one that they send in.
sure.
But we can't sell them in the schools.
And if we wind up with 400 bottles of water that we need to get rid of, are we okay to pass them out?
I would think we are.
Okay, it's selling them that's a problem right now. Thank you.
I will make sure I clarify that statement at the Board of Health, but right now, that's my understanding, but.
And this is, I mean, the equity issue is one that really concerns me, as well as the funding issue or the impact to our food services group. Is there, in terms of branding bottles or starting the school year with bottles, is that something that the senior class could do as a present to the incoming? Or I guess what I'm wondering is, probably not because it's too early in this, but quantifying the cost of handing everybody a bottle and they're required to put their name on it, but they'll still lose it anyway.
Right, yeah, we haven't got to that point yet, but that's
Yeah.
gonna be a hustle between now and middle of July, probably, just to make sure. Again, if there are supply chain issues and we're trying to order 400 or 500 bottles, then
Right.
a conversation.
And then I guess a question for us is, if some of the entities that have been generous with us in the past want to give us a bottle for every kid in the school, but they want to have their logo on it. Are we comfortable with that? So if a local bank says, sure, here's the money to do that,
Do we have advertisements elsewhere in the district from local companies that support us? What do the walls of the gymnasium look like?
Right. Right now, no, but we would have to visit our advertising policy at the school committee level, and the other conversation
Yeah.
would be, do you actually consider it advertising? Because if somebody donates a park bench or a book, we do put a sticker on that. So there's a fine line between, I guess it would be this
Right.
body that would be permissible to define whether or not you consider it an ad or not. If it said gift of so-and-so, that's different than please shop at so-and-so, theoretically.
well, I guess it starts at quantifying the cost.
Yeah,
If
I'll-
it's something
I'll-
we can
yeah.
absorb, or, which I know you know, I'm not
Yeah,
telling
oh,
you
yeah.
something
No, I
you don't know.
yeah. Well,
I have only one other question, which is, does our food service currently break even
Yes,
with water sales?
yes.
Yeah,
Altogether, yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
So that's the concern right now, was how we're gonna make that up. Because I would suspect $2.50 is gonna be a
That's,
price point we're not gonna hit for water.
And just one last question. Has Rockport ever signed a contract with a major beverage provider? Just curious. Those providers will wind up pushing bottled water and single-use plastic bottles, so I'm not sure that's the direction to go. Just curious.
okay, so I guess more to come on this. Is there anything we would be expecting by our last meeting before we adjourn for the summer?
No, I mean, I'll ask Deb to follow up on the timeline to make sure everything I've reported here and that we report to the Board of Health is accurate. And if there's a change by whenever that meeting is, June 7th or whatever, I'll come back to you. Otherwise, in August, we'll have an update. That tends to be where we talk about prices of lunch and food, which, because it's subsidized, it would really be a conversation about the à la carte pricing. And we'll bring that to you as we always would at the first meeting in August. And, no, go ahead.
Would you mind just giving a quick update also about the
Trays and-
reusable trays
yeah.
and the?
So, Deb already had a plan in place to finish the school year with disposable trays and disposable utensils, and then we will shut that down as well. And then we open up the new school year, we'll be using the plastic trays and the regular silverware again. For two reasons. One, inventory purposes. I don't want to be wasteful, she doesn't want to be wasteful, so we have, a plethora of some of that inventory that we want to get through as quickly as possible. Secondarily, as strange as it sounds, we have our actual personnel rotation, and the dishwashing station is not built in that rotation right now. And we've hired and organized staffing patterns and schedules around a certain rotation in the cafeteria, which will then have to be impacted when you add the dishwasher station back in. So that'll all happen for the start of the school year. Which again is a really nice shift. I mean, COVID and lots of reasons came into play for that. We were formally told by the medical field that we actually had an end date recently. I went into my child's doctor today and didn't wear a mask, and it was almost strange to go in a medical facility without it, actually. So we just figure we'll celebrate the end of this year, get through all the inventory we can, and then we'll bring out the trays and the silverware to start the school year. So we'll make sure we report that to Board of Health as well, because I'm sure that'll come up.
A little Google search finds that there's toppers you can put on aluminum cans
Yeah.
that make them reusable, and you can, kind of close them down. Some of them are probably better than others.
There are also behavioral and health concerns around the aluminum.
Well,
I don't even mean from toxic standpoints. I just mean kids being kids and
the noises and the
or
crushing.
literally
Crushing
tearing them
them,
apart and
cutting
cutting themselves
themselves.
open. There's a lot of there's a lot on my mind when it comes to what kids are holding in their hands. Yeah.
Well, and the cardboard boxes that I've seen before do have plastic closures.
And they're lined with something, because otherwise the water would be leaking
Right,
out.
exactly.
I'm not
yeah.
exactly a
And
cardboard
there's-
scientist, but
there are plastics in that too, so nice glass bottles would be. Yeah, no, yeah, I know.
We'll start with the free gifts if we
The
can.
elementary staff just went, no.
I know.
I just have to ask, are you really going back to the kind of plastic trays we used in 1981 where we could go sledding on them?
I have not seen them yet. I don't know if we have to purchase new ones or not, so they might even have the section still. You never know.
Could be fun.
And
I fondly remember using them as sleds, though, so it's a nice, it's like comfort food for me.
And what about okay, so this is getting a little bit in the weeds. What about the flatware? Are we talking about metal forks and knives?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah. That's what schools, cafeterias, hospitals, everybody's had for years, and, yep,
Okay.
we are.
Can a kid in a fork?
Sporks, can we get sporks?
Good.
Okay, so you
Good.
had a
We're good.
related sort of topic, I believe.
That was it, just the trays.
That was it.
Just the trays and
The
silverware.
trays.
Yeah,
Okay,
No, it's okay.
The related.
yeah, that was it.
all right. So that would move us into 3 job descriptions that have been modified. We're looking to review and approve them.
So, Mr. Chair, you have 3 job descriptions tonight. If you recall, they were attached to the budget, part of the reorg. And so we went through them in the budget process, but they've taken some time to evolve. The first one, the school office clerk, has been vetted through RESA, through the union, and received its blessing. So the Rockport Educational Support Staff and I have gone through this one already. And so this is the school office clerk instead of the teacher clerk, which will really, really give us some nice coverage, particularly at the elementary school in a really necessary way. I've been heavily involved with members of the leadership team and Chief Horvath recently in completely overhauling our safety plans and responses. I don't know if I've said this publicly to this board or not, but the chief is on a state-level committee. He's one of the few chiefs in the state on this advisory board, and he's working very closely with MASS. And he's actually going to be one of the people in the table discussions leading the superintendent's roundtables in my spring meeting. So he's done a lot of work at this around school safety. And so as we've had conversations about staffing and school safety, a lot of conversations have evolved around single point of entry schools, which older buildings have not caught up to speed with. Certain places in Massachusetts have not caught up to speed with yet. When you build a new building, it's just sort of a given. So we're looking at vestibules, we're looking at Raptor systems, we're looking at a lot of technology and infrastructure to make sure we can make our kids and our staff as safe as possible and our buildings as safe as possible. Some of that will come with personnel shifts. And I would suspect that the school office clerk position will have some kind of role in that work moving forward as far as safety and security and access to the schools go. So pretty straightforward otherwise. So if there's no questions on that one. The second one is the central office administrative assistant position. And I'll talk about both of these at the same time. The executive assistant to the director of student services is also in here. This is in an effort for lots of confidentiality purposes to have no union employees working in central office. There's a lot more information coming in and out of that office. An unbelievable amount of important information coming in and out of the Director of Student Services office when it comes to confidentiality and documents and timelines. And we have people in there who are doing an unbelievable job. So we're looking to restructure the positions. When you restructure positions, you have to create the new job descriptions. You do have to post an interview. So we're looking to expedite those processes so that we have everybody in the correct positions and we can move forward. So the central office admin assistant will provide, you'll see while it reports to me or my designee, it's really to gap fill the work being done by the business manager and the director of student services. Everything from the inundation of mail that comes in, to the receipts, to the timelines, to keeping both of those offices on track with it from a daily operations standpoint, so that the person who is in the executive assistant role can do a lot of the higher ed work that Martha's office is really responsible for. So that person really that position's always been sort of Martha's right-hand person, but we need that position to focus more solely on some of that work and let this other position kind of take some of the other work. So I think this will really round out central office in a balanced way. I'm excited to make these positions happen, and I do thank the union. But I've thanked them in my office, outside of my office, as publicly as many times as I can. These are difficult conversations, and so I want to make sure people understand publicly that, you know, every time we make a position, non-union or union, we're looking for balance. And so keeping the office clerk positions in is very important from a union standpoint, and making sure that that organization remains viable and those people remain viable is important to me as well. If you recall, we had to cut all 3 positions due to contractual language. And we are able to minimally bring back the one at the elementary school in this new role because, as we've talked about on camera before, it's a very, very busy place in the morning and at the end of the day. And there's a real high need to take care of families and students, and we need that extra person. June is not here tonight, so she can't throw anything at me. I'm still optimistic that we'll be able to take a look at one more position in a positive way to help us with some of the safety and security issues and some of the work at the middle high school. So minimally, it's 1 position coming back. My desire would be to see 2 come back, so I'll be able to give you a firm update on that at the last meeting. So questions, comments, thoughts about any of the 3, and then we just need approval at some point.
Any concerns or questions? All right, so do we have a motion to approve the positions of central office administrative assistant, school office clerk, and executive assistant to the director of student services as presented?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so those are approved. I don't believe we have a financial update. We did have
We
one
do
in our
not.
last meeting that,
We do. She is currently at her state conference right now, so hopefully becoming very learned.
she'll come back with money, is that what you're
Yes,
thinking?
that's the hope.
All right. Item 12, school committee discussion on our standing agenda is just to allow a place for anything that anyone had as a walk-on item.
I have a couple things thinking about coming up to the end of the year and thinking about next year specifically.
Yeah.
So just to kind of talk about and see what the committee thinks. The first is thinking about next year and increasing communications with in my current school district, they call it a tri-board tour for select board, FinCom, and school committee members to go into the schools and take a tour of the schools to really get a sense of what's happening in the schools. A lot of the members either don't have kids in the schools or aren't familiar, or it's been a long time since they've been in the school. So I think it would be a really interesting idea to bring forward and talk about as a way to increase engagement.
I think that's a really great idea. And I think there are some people on those boards who feel a little, they need the invitation to come in. They want to
Right.
come see it, but they don't know if it's appropriate.
Right.
And
And it'd have to be done in a very structured way where they're led, through, with an admin or
Right.
somebody. But I think it would be a nice way for people to get more involved and more engaged with the schools. Second thing is we've talked a lot, this time of year with new hires. You've mentioned a few today. And as you mentioned those new hires, you gave a brief biography, really. It feels to me like, I don't know, I wish there was a way to have more information about the teachers in terms of who they are, their experience, where they're coming from, not only as a school committee member, but as a parent. And I don't know how that would happen. So you mentioned some, tonight in a public meeting. I know people would have concerns about having, photos posted. I know we have a staff directory on the website with, I don't believe there's photos on there anymore. Maybe there used to be, I think.
it is,
So-
yeah. It used to
So,
be.
but there's not now. So I don't know. I'd love if there was a way to communicate, again, going back to that communication, who are the teachers in our schools and who are with our kids and what experiences do they have and who are they? I don't know exactly how to make that happen, but I would love if we could.
So this was sort of beyond the parent night where you actually.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good, so that's kind of the step, right? That's who you see in front of you, but
Who else is there?
Who else is there?
So we've started to have conversations at the leadership level, again, about communication and putting your best foot forward from a PR standpoint almost.
Right.
And we talked in one session about, I remember being a young parent and going to my pediatrician's office and seeing like the old school frame with the photo of the doctor, and there were 6 pediatricians on the wall, and it just said, you know, well, you know, welcome Dr. Morehouse. She had been a new doctor there, and then, you know, give a little Dr. Morehouse studied at A, B, C, and D, you know, and whatever information they're willing to put on that one pager, right? You know, studied X school, loves to fly kites and play with her dog, whatever, right? Like some niceties. So we've talked about that kind of stuff, like how do we put that kind of information just kind of in a get to know you way, whether that happens in a lobby, you know, team 6, team 7, team 8 kind of a concept, or does it happen more transparently on the website and in the schools. We've had those conversations a little bit. The other thing we've talked about is doing faculty spotlights or staff spotlights through our Friday updates.
I love it.
I hesitate to say it because then I'm not going to be able to name the teacher. But we've had one teacher get published recently, journal articles. One has finished a book. So we have a lot of talent in the rank, so to speak. And other than here, where maybe a few people watching us on TV and someone sits, it would be nice to get that out there to the masses somehow.
Yeah.
So
I
we're
mean-
talking about staff spotlights and other things kind of in year 2 and year 3. So.
Yeah, as you mentioned, it's really the communication and that PR.
Yep.
That should be,
Yeah.
we should be advertising that in
And some
Proud
of
of
this
it.
will be embedded, not so explicitly, but hopefully you'll see it in the strategic plan as we come
right.
out of that in August and September, and you'll see some, you know, community relations kind of.
Another idea, and I don't know if this would work or exactly how, thinking of maybe one of our meetings in the beginning of the year sometime could be held, I know it's harder to do it earlier in the day. If there was a way possibly to do that and have new hires come and introduce themselves. I know it's hard for new hire, you know, somebody to come at 7:00 at night if they don't live in town. But if it's done, you know, after school at some point in time, so just another idea.
That also might feel very, hopefully that would feel very welcoming.
Right.
As opposed to, you know,
I don't know, I thought my office was welcoming, and I'm not sure that was, when you call the superintendent's office to sign your contract, that that's a welcoming environment either, so I tried. Everybody reacts differently. No, they're good ideas, though. I like them.
do you, Mark, are there, at the school you're currently at, do they have things like that in place? that-
I was trying to think, when I was hired, there was a photo and like a brief paragraph that was sent out.
Yep.
And in a school that I was originally hired at, like 18 years ago, we had photos of all the teams in the lobby of the building. So just exactly what you were mentioning.
I wonder if there are beginning of the year traditions that already exist that bring together all of the faculty, where it might be appropriate, perhaps, for members of the school committee to attend, to say good morning and to say welcome, and maybe that would be a great way
that's awesome.
for people to see how we support them.
There
Maybe
is-
that
there-
already
there is an
exists.
Opening day
Yeah.
reception where school committee tries to steal the thunder of the new superintendent.
And we did, we introduced all the new faculty and staff, we had everybody
It's
stand
really-
up, and
it's
it's
really
kind of
nice.
nice, so.
Because that can be a great way to really understand who are the new folks in the room.
You know, I think, Mark, I think there's let me throw this out there and see if it gains any traction. The meetings this year have been extraordinarily efficient, which is wonderful. I think a lot about, we don't actually get any direct interaction anymore from teachers or curriculum directors or, you know, and partially, I think in the past, we had the ability to say, is there anything you need? Now, in a well-running system, those needs have been expressed up the chain and have been attended to or have been looked at. But I think somewhere between those two poles of never seeing them and perhaps, you know, giving an inappropriate avenue to try and make an appeal that hasn't been vetted yet through the proper channels. I don't know. I think I'd like to see how, I don't know how
So
the
both
rest of
of,
you are
yeah, so
feeling.
both of those conversations have started to happen. I think in different meetings, I've said, you kind of got a reprieve from some of that work this year because
Yes.
it really was
Yes.
selfishly and good or bad about my entry and about moving forward and putting things together and systemically. So now, I did a lot of the commercials for curriculum updates and professional development, but the principals and the curriculum leaders have already been told, like, moving forward, we don't want to go back to a 4-hour math night either.
No.
But I don't think. So, what I'm thinking is, again, either quarterly or trimesterally, some kind of nice update, either full curriculum update, or I'll probably micromanage it to certain subject areas that we kind of parcel them out over the course of the school year, so that by the end of the year, you've heard from all the major departments about where they're going in their initiatives, and by then, we would have had the strategic plan unveiled, and
To sync with it.
you'll be able to sync up to it and connect to it too. So, yeah, I believe year 2, you're gonna see much more of that, and you and I have talked about getting more kids in here too.
Yeah.
Just making sure we hear from the voices of our constituents, so to speak. They're the ones who are benefiting from the work, so if I can put more kids and staff in here, that'd be great.
I mean, I really like the sound of that because I think, over the years, you have some presenters who can't wait to get in here to talk to us and some who can't wait to get out of here. But it does give us really an immediate feel for
Yeah.
what's going on. And also it provides the opportunity, I guess, in a callback to the audience member we had, there's an ability to say, if you're interested in various curriculum areas, there'll be presentations so you can get a feel for what we're actually aiming at from the people who actually are doing the work.
I do have a discussion point if once all school committee members are
Sure.
done. I just don't want to go out of order. You're all good? So I feel like most of the time, we're giving you professional development updates after the fact. And so there's a really exciting PD coming up on Friday that I just want to give you a commercial for. And if it, can't have 3 of you show up, right? But you can have 2 of you. So if it's something that's interesting to you and you want to check it out. So we have Dr. Jessica Minahan, who's a BCBA licensed Board of Health behavior analyst coming in. She has written the Behavior Code, really famous book that's used in a lot of districts across the country. She's going to be leading 2 sessions for us called Practical Strategies for Reducing Anxiety and Challenging Behaviors in the Classroom. Very, very authentic, all transferable, actionable information right out of the gate. Would love to have her at the start of a school year, but she's incredibly difficult to book. So I take what I can get sometimes. So this is our last half day of the year, and she's going to kind of basically set this as a kickoff to start us back up, really, with some strategies and some thoughts. So she'll be doing 2 sessions back to back at the auditorium at the high school, middle school on Friday from 12 to 1:30. She'll be working with the middle high school staff, taking an extremely short break. And then from 1:45 to 3:15, she'll be going with the elementary staff. So if it's something that interests you, or you just want to see a little bit of what that looks like, love to have it just kind of in the back and check it out. But and we are currently negotiating with multiple PD providers and consultants for next year to continue the work around equity, continue the work around inclusionary practices. And as soon as that's all sort of rolled into a draft PD plan, I'll be able to share all of that with you. So that's all I have.
So if someone wants to attend that, maybe, are you aiming them at Amanda so
Yep.
she knows
just let her know
who's
you're coming.
coming?
Yep.
Yeah,
Thank you.
all right. Do we have a need for executive session tonight?
Not to my knowledge.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded.
Nice. All those in favor? Aye. All right, meeting stands.